Thank you for joining and welcome to another live stream. First of all, I have to apologise. I had intended to do this every week, but perhaps that was too optimistic. I'd like to make it a weekly stream, but I've got to see where this fits in to my schedule. Perhaps if I make it a little shorter, that would help matters. But again, as last time, this is going to be a realistic look behind the scenes at what I've been doing as a freelance graphic designer for the last week or so. And something else I quite like to try is going live at some point during the week while I'm actually working on a project. I think that might be useful. If I'm working on something particularly interesting, maybe a logo design project, if I go live and you can join me, you can either see the successes, the ideas coming together, or you can watch me struggle to make headway with the concepts. But either way, that might be quite useful. That could be fun, so something I'd like to try in future. So for today, I've earmarked a few things I'd like to share with you. How some of the projects progressed since the last live stream. So I actually have completion on both projects and I can share those guidelines with you. So that was USADA, which was the fashion brand, and then also the British voiceover brand. So I'll show you how that progressed. Then a few other projects I've been working on. I'm able to share those. They actually both completed as well. So again, I can share the whole process. And then I'd like to do a little question and answer session if there's time. And I'm not sure how convenient this streaming time is. I'm conscious some may be working, it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon, British time. So I'm not sure if this is the best time to do a live stream. But if you're here, if you have questions, please don't wait to the end. Feel free to post questions in the comments and then I'll come back to them at the end and answer what I can. And again, anyone from the Skillshare classes who's been able to join, if you'd like to share some of your work, get some real-time feedback, some suggestions, then I'd be happy to do that at the end of this stream as well. So before we actually take a look at the projects I've been working on, a few other developments that I'm quite excited about. One of them I can share with you here. I've actually got a decent HD 4K video camera. So this is going to make a big difference, I hope, to the video quality in my courses. At the moment, it looks quite nice to have a black background, but I think it struggles a little with the camera that I'm using. So hopefully that's something you'll appreciate, better course quality from now on. And then something else I can share with you, and I'll just swap across my screen mode here so you can see my desktop. And this is a website I've been putting together myself on Squarespace. So I've drafted it up and I'm quite happy with it. It's going to be called Graphic Design Learn. It's by JM Graphic Design. I want to make the link between my parent brand and this sub brand. But it's basically one place you'll be able to visit and you'll be able to see all the latest courses on Skillshare. Because of course not everyone that comes across my website is on Skillshare or has heard of it. So I thought it would be good to consolidate that. So you can jump straight into the courses here. They are of course free. If you use the links in the description, you get at least 14 days to enjoy those. And then a catalogue of all the resources I've shared so far. So many of these are linked to my classes, but I thought again it would be useful to have these in one place. And then my idea is, depending on how this is received, I'll start to roll out some premium resources, perhaps even 1 or 2 premium classes. And and merchandise. So I can monetize this to some extent, and it will enable me just to spend a larger portion of time working on this. For those that are interested, to get something a little more exclusive. So that's something I'm quite excited about that I've been working on actually earlier this week. And in the interests of this being a realistic, raw look at the life of a graphic designer, why, you might wonder, have I had so much time to put something like that together this week? Well, not one, but two of the projects I've been working on, fairly big projects, have actually reached points where they're on hold. So in one case, things have gone now to the copywriter. I've done a wireframe and a draft of a website. It's gone to a copywriter, and until the copy progresses a step further, I can't take that and get on with my next phase. So that project is on hold, should be resuming next week. And then another project, and this is an interesting one, perhaps you face something similar. The client has had a huge wave of success, of bookings. It's a photographer, and their studio, because of lockdowns, has now opened, and they've been manically busy. And so the new branding understandably goes to the back burner. It's not such a priority. So if you're a freelance designer, you've really got to be prepared to be flexible, to allow for these things. It's very rare that your projects will progress in a linear, streamlined way. Quite often we have many plates to juggle, but at times you have to turn your attention to something else. It's quite good to have something up your sleeve so you can make best use of any delays. Maybe you're waiting for a client to give you feedback. And for myself, that's where these courses and even this live stream comes in. So I can feel I'm making quite good use of any downtime from delays or unexpected waiting periods in projects. So there you go. There's something you won't have found out if you look at someone's Instagram feed. But let's get going. Let's have a look at the projects that I shared last time around. And we'll start with the fashion brand, USADA. So I'll open the guidelines here. This is the best way for you to see the end result. And this is the iteration we went with. I'd offered in the last stream, you may remember, the client 3 different options for the logo. One which incorporated this gold key line running along behind the logo, and then a version without, and then a version actually subtracted from the logo. So they went for this version in the end, which I'm quite happy with. And as always, I explain what files they have in their identity folder. You may be familiar with this way of presenting the brand guidelines. I do use it from time to time. I include the research and strategy work. Just a little summary of that on this page here. And here's a version that can be used on a white background. So quite important, you pick a gold that's visible on white, particularly if a gold treatment was applied to the actual wording. You've got to be really careful, and you have to use a gold tone that's almost so dark it's leaning towards a dusty brown. But legibility is key. So I've provided a version here which is quite legible on white, and then a version on a dark background, and there is a slight difference between the two. You won't notice, hopefully, optically as you're flicking between them, but the actual values used in the artwork is quite different. Then a brand mark. So the brand mark won't always be shown next to the logo type. Sometimes you just create a submark they can use, and they can decide to use either or. But in this case, because the main logo includes a brand mark, I've just provided that standalone, which is quite useful for social media. Sometimes cramming the full logo into that tiny spot you're given for your profile picture it's not ideal. This looks far more elegant. The usual guidelines for your logo usage and spacing. A single font family, which works very well in this case. I always include some idea of how to use and space it. Color palette, always interesting when a palette includes the use of gradients. So although I illustrate it here, you can't possibly provide color values for every step in the gradient. So instead, I'll include in their files artwork for the gradient, so they're able to use it in that manner. And then stationery examples, which I'll have to go back and add, and a little something I mocked up. So I can jump across to the stationery. An item of stationery was a static coming soon graphic, which looks quite nice. The little lighting and texture being nice touches in the background there. So the client, I'm not involved with this website, but the client can take that graphic and just pop that straight on their holding page until the website is developed. Business cards, again, nice and simple. And then a letterhead. So again, really sleek, simple, and elegant. So that was the outcome of that project. The other one, which I showed you a fair bit of the development for in the last live stream, was the British voiceover artist. And perhaps no surprises here, this is the final iteration we've decided to use. And I think this may have been present in that live stream. So you'll notice I'm presenting this to different clients, but the background template is the same. I'm not creating from scratch every time I do brand guidelines, because so many of these details can remain consistent to save time. So the little summary along the left-hand border, this explanation of what to do with the files, that doesn't need to change. The summary of the guidelines doesn't need to change. The explanation of the brand messages, the same. It's only the actual messages themselves here that needs to be updated. So you can see, as I'm flicking through this, the end result is a really high quality, well presented document, but there's very little duplication of effort. It's a case of dropping the different aspects and features in for each client, and using the overall template to present it well and to save time. And it really is a massive time saver. Again, I do have I think a soft spot for golds, silvers, platinums, all things shiny. But for luxury brands, they do work so well. So again, they've got a few options there. And I've suggested having the whole thing printed in gold foil with a mock-up here, and why not? That looks really stunning. So that's it. Another brand completed. And if you look for Tutu on Google or search for her on Instagram, you can follow her and see how her brand progresses. Always exciting to work with a startup. So these are brands I haven't shown before, and I'm conscious of time for this live stream. I'm going to try to keep it to around half an hour, 45 minutes. So we'll go at a fair pace, but I'll maybe stop and spend time explaining anything I think could be a teaching point or you could learn something from. So let's start with the behind the scenes look at the initial concepts. If I open this in Illustrator, I think that's going to be the best way to view it. Obviously the client just sees a PDF document. So lots of ideas. I'll take it from the top. So as always, I begin with an exploration of different fonts. So sometimes I'll use the ones I have to begin with in the template to really loosely gauge things, and then I'll start to explore fonts that are a little more bespoke. And I use this across the following pages as part of the concepts. So this is an example of a case where I don't think I actually got the iPad out and sketched anything. It seemed the fastest way to flesh out and test these ideas was to do it digitally. So this all happens in Illustrator. You can see I've tried a badge concept. I've explored, the idea of a symbol. So because the brand is car alloy restoration, so if your alloys were scratched, perhaps quite badly, you would send them through to this company, and they restore them, and they actually restore them to the point they look as good as new, as if they come from the factory. So quite an obvious symbol to use, but sometimes obvious is best. Simple and obvious, sometimes the best way to go. So I've looked at incorporating maybe one of these kind of simplified graphics depicting a very obvious alloy wheel, and could we use that somehow maybe as part of a B, as you can see here. I've also explored whether we could do some kind of monogram, or well, I should say motive. A monogram is of course only if you're combining two or more letters, so maybe a motive for the B. And I really liked this font. I think I realized something that follows the round curves of the tire seems really fitting. It also seems modern, it seems clean, all good things when we're looking at the brand messaging here. And of course I should show the brand messaging. I'll stop at this concept. So that's quite nice, that treatment on the O. Again, simple but effective. It really creates the right expectation for what this company does. But let me show you the research and brand strategy that led to this, just briefly. So as always, we had a look at the competitors. And this is something worth mentioning. If you do go for the simple, perhaps the obvious approach, it's unlikely to be unique. And look how many of the competitors have incorporated some form of, some depiction of an alloy tire in their logo. So there's a trade-off to be had. We looked at the target audience, so they quite like to have I think deals with the actual car showrooms, and they'll have something in place where they'll look after all the needs of that particular dealership or showroom. So another approach is try to create something that feels fitting for the target audience. So if the target audience, you look at them and there's, as there is here, quite a clear pattern to the brands. There's this kind of metallic treatment on the logos. They're very modern, they're very sleek, very simple. Well, if you create something that could fit on this page and feel comfortable, automatically that client, that target audience, feels that your brand is likely to be a good fit for them. So I often start by looking at that and whether something can be done there. And then here were the brand messages. So you'll see this is what I'm trying to bring out in the concepts we explored. Really the USP are the results. The fact they make the tires look as good as new. So there's the USP, and then subject to that, how do they achieve that? How do they go about getting you those results? Well, they're efficient, they work with top tier tires, and they are specialists. This is the only thing they do. So there's a quick look at the brand messages, and if I flick to positioning, they want to be the gold standard for this unbeatable quality. So hopefully now, I should have shown you that first, these concepts make that bit more sense. With that as the objective, these are the solutions that I'm proposing. Quite liked this idea. This looks really cool, but this is a case of coming up with a good idea, and as you begin to analyze it, you realize perhaps it's not appropriate. So this, of course, looks like a 13. It looks in one sense like a B, but it can also read as a 13, which wouldn't be good. So it's a shame, but that version I quite liked. This I really liked, and in fact this idea of completely filling a letter and putting that metallic finish is something we did use in the selected concept. In fact, in this variant here. So this was the concept we decided to explore further. Some more ideas, different. I think it's important with the concepts to include enough variety so you and your client can scope what's working best. Should it be a bold, bulky font? Could you try something that's lighter, more elegant? And just include enough variety that the client has some different options. We even tried something that has a signature concept, and so on. You get the idea with these. So as I said, the concept selected was the version with the field O, and I'll show you the brand guidelines because there wasn't much development work needed. We really love this concept, and when that happens, rather than just burning through, if a project includes a certain number of revisions, there's no need. If you get it right the first time, just make a beeline and invest your time in the concept that works. And that's what we've done here. Fed this into my usual template. Again, these color values are different. These are darker silvers for the version that would go on light backgrounds, and then lighter silver for the version that would go on dark. There's a nice simple submark that can be used. So in this case, the main logo doesn't include that submark at all. In fact, there's no field B in this logo, but it fits the theme of the logo and it's fitting enough to be used. It's distinct enough. So this is an example of a submark being created for the sole purpose of standing on its own. So you would use one or the other, not the two together. The submark of a full logo. And then some examples of use, colors, and there we are. And a little preview of the way the Instagram page may look. So quite a nice brand. That's finished now. That project is wrapped up. And if I head back to the last project I wanted to share on this stream, this is another fashion brand. This time it's specifically for loafers. So popular men's shoes, classics, been around for a long time. And this is a versatile version of the loafer that someone could wear into work if they work in the city, and then they could go for drinks after work, and it's still the right fit, it's still appropriate, and they could even use it in quite a casual scenario. So a versatile take on a classic shoe. So this was just a logo design only project, not the full brand identity. So the research is more limited. In this case, I send a questionnaire to the client, obviously speak on the phone, or it could be Zoom. In this case, it wasn't, it was a phone call. And I just try to create the brief from that. There isn't the research and strategy document that you've seen for the other projects. So I'll share something here. This is an idea the client sent across. This is one of his sketches. And he wanted to play on the word loafers, as in loaves of bread. And the idea was to somehow have like the end of a loaf of bread formed here. And this is a tough one. This is probably something good to talk about when you're freelancing. So what do you do if a client comes to you and you don't agree with the idea, or you can kind of see a weakness in it? The job hasn't booked yet. It's just an inquiry. You're discussing it together. Do you act honestly? Do you really tell them what you think? Do you suggest an alternative? Or do you just roll with their idea to book the job? Well, in this case, I was honest with the client, and I said I don't think, if this is intended to be a luxury brand, I think it's distracting. It's putting all the attention on this play on words, but there's no real value to that analogy. A loaf of bread being compared to a shoe, it's not a good thing. So can we look at other approaches? And he was quite invested in this idea. He really wanted to see how it worked, but we spoke a little and he agreed, okay, let's try a different approach that I suggest. And he'd use, I think, the expression, I'm looking for someone to bring my vision to life. Someone that can bring my vision to life. And I said to him, I can't do that because I can't read your mind. I can propose something that with my training and my expertise, I believe will work, will get you results, will be well accepted by your target audience. But I can't promise to just bring a dream to life. And I think it's important sometimes to make that distinction, to be honest with the client, because if a deciding factor of whether your project has succeeded, the brand that you're developing has succeeded or not, is whether the client likes it, whether it was something abstract the client dreamed up, or whether it's something that meets measurable criteria, whether it's appropriate for the audience, whether it looks professional. You can set yourself up for failure sometimes. And I think we've all done it. We've sometimes got carried away, promised, yes, I can see what you're thinking. Let's bring your vision to life. But it's much safer to come up with a clear brief and some realistic, measurable goals that you can deliver on. So this idea wasn't to be. And if I now open up the initial concepts, I'll share with you the direction I explored. And I did actually, I gave an overview here. I found on Amazon, there's actually some shoes, some slippers that someone's called loafers. And this is the play on words. It was just to show to the client, this really wasn't the right approach to use. I think it could be quite confusing. We looked at a few inspirational brands that he provided. And then I begin, as usual, exploring fonts as a starting point. And just some basic layouts, trying to scope out how we might present this. So to me, this is quite classy. I thought we could definitely make use of a combination of a classic typeface, because loafers are classics, and then have a nice modern treatment for the word London underneath. So it looks like something timeless with a hint of the classic, but unmistakably a modern brand, not an old-fashioned brand. We looked at perhaps some kind of symbol or motive using the L. Looked at the use of key lines, and that was interestingly inspired by, if I go back here, the logo for Doc Martens, which felt like the odd one out to me of these inspirational brands. I scratched my head a bit, but I think it's the reputation, it's what they achieved. that the client quite liked about that brand. And I just flagged up here, this is the odd one out. It's not really a luxury brand, but what about these stripes at the bottom? That's quite interesting. Maybe we could explore something similar with your brand, which we did. More concepts, more fonts. Looked at maybe doing something by repeating the V from Lovers here. So perhaps this is a good time to show you how to do this. Let's throw in a quick Illustrator tip. So if you take this V, as I have, and holding the Alt key to duplicate, place it somewhere. If you've got the grids enabled in your properties, which I have, if you look at the properties panel, you've got ruler and grids, and you can turn the toggle for the grid on or off here. And using this grid to help you, if you select that V, hit R to bring up the rotate tool. And I think about here, I'm going to click a spot on the grid, click and drag, and then hold Alt to duplicate. And now you've got to also press the Shift key, and that can constrain the number of degrees this rotates by 45-degree increments. If you release the Shift key, you can freely rotate that. So I'm going to, just for the purpose of demonstrating this, I'm going to hold Shift, constrain that to 45 degrees, release to complete my click, and then if you press Control or Command D, it will duplicate that transformation, and there you have it. So I mean, I don't think this really worked, but for some brands, you know, something where you take an element of a logo and you duplicate it, you rotate it, it can create some interesting patterns, some interesting shapes, and sometimes something that's got a nod to the full logo, but it's abstract, it can work really well. It can be quite classy. So there's a quick tip. This is indeed a monogram because we've got 2 or more letters. So I explored the idea of that. Some more exploration here. And there we are. So you can see the direction I was heading. This is quite an interesting one. I don't think appropriate for this brand, but almost a super simple version of that L. And I thought perhaps that loosely resembled, you know, the city. I think it would need a bit more detail to resemble, you know, maybe a silhouette of a city, of the buildings. That was the idea. Didn't work in this case. And now at the end, and actually this is the direction I think we decided to head, I looked at some more unique typefaces, something a bit more cursive, and these I really liked. These are some fonts I'd put aside to use a little while ago, and I love the fact they combine like a traditional serif typeface with some cursive elements, and it's almost a serif meets a script typeface. I really like that combination, and they've included in the glyphs some additional options. So as you highlight a letter, they won't have it for V, but perhaps for the A. You've got some nice options here. So when you select in InDesign, that's a little quick tip as well. You get to see the potential glyphs. And of course, I've chosen to use the L and the R. And then down here, this is a little messy, too messy perhaps for this brand, but I quite like the way that L flows under the A. And then another version here. Something a little more simple. And again with a key line this time. So lots and lots of concepts tried out here. To be honest, potentially a bit overwhelming for the client, but in this case, it proved to be very useful. I'll show you what I sent to the client in addition to that. Actually, let's show you the PDF version to kind of emphasize the point. They receive this. So the 4 concepts as agreed in whichever contract they've agreed with me. In this case, it was 4 concepts. So here are the 4 concepts: 1, 2, 3, and 4. But rather than just send that, and I do include an explanation here, why I think these concepts are appropriate. Rather than just that, by sending the work behind the scenes, I found it saves the client from asking, well, what if we did this? What if we did that? And looking at something that's potentially quite simple and wondering, well, why have you picked this? Is this all I get? Just these 4 options? Even if they look stunning, I know that clients will wonder what else, and they may be conscious. You've spent maybe a week working on this. It doesn't seem like you're presenting much. So that's my my solution, is to send the 2 together. To send, here's the easy choice, the favorite 4, and please let me know which you prefer. But if you're interested, here's a look at the journey that led me to those concepts. And in this case, that worked really well, because the client, and he gave excellent feedback, really kind of broke down and identified which elements he liked and didn't like, which is so useful to a designer. If I open up developed concept, I presented a little overview of the objectives here, because he's actually picked elements from different concepts that we felt would complement each other. So 2 concepts that use this sort of script serif hybrid font, but we liked different parts of these and we wanted to see if we could combine them, which is something I'm always very happy to do. Sometimes it works really well. And then just to combine the key line from this final concept here. So this was the goal, something that would look like this in the end, but we needed to combine the best parts of both fonts. So again, I've included in this development stage, I've included my workings here, so you can see I've just taken it a step at a time. First of all, outlined this font, and then just explored, I think, using anchor points and the pen tool, elongating that myself. And to me that it doesn't work. It looks overstretched. In the other example, the other font, it reaches halfway down the O, but it looks balanced. It works. With this one, for some reason, it just looks really spindly when it begins to get to that length. And I've not spent a great deal of time here. I've just roughly tried to see what might work and what might not. So then as we go down through these iterations, you can see that's working better. So that's actually taking this portion of the L from the second concept and combining it with the L from the first concept. So combining the best parts of the 2. And I think it works really well. I had to reduce the weight a little bit, just nudging up the anchor points, but I think that flows really nicely. And similarly for the R, you can see up here, this is with the new versions just plonked in straight from the second concept, and they stand out. The weight is much heavier, really doesn't flow very nicely. Who's this in the chat? Hi, Hyru. Hi, Jason. Hi. Thanks for joining, Hyru. Glad you could join. So as we come down here, you can see now I've combined that portion of of concept 2s are with the R that we want. So really the best of both, and then I've zoomed right in and, you know, carefully looked at the anchor points, made sure everything is overlapping just perfectly, so that we've in the end created something that's completely unique, and it's taking the best of both. And I've commented here, these are much more naturally shaped the way they flow. Then some balancing, and if you're interested in this technique of balancing the logo lockup, there's I think a part in one of my Skillshare classes on that, in the 10 tips for logo design. So check that out if you'd like to learn that technique. And this is it, with the keyline applied as well. And some mock-ups, just to show how that might look in practice. And I love it. I think it's very strong. Really elegant, simple, and unique to the client. So another project which has crossed the finish line. And if you look out for that, perhaps you can purchase a pair of the shoes, which I've yet to see. I think he wanted a brand identity in place first, and now he'll be creating the actual shoe. So exciting times for that client. But that's what I've been working on. That's really taking us up to date from the last live stream. And it's a shame there are a few projects I've signed non-disclosures and I can't share here. Perhaps on completion, but I certainly can't share them while we're still working and they've not yet launched. So that takes us up to date. I can see we've got a few viewers. Do you have any questions? Otherwise, I'll end the live stream here. Is there anything, perhaps while you've watched the classes, the courses, questions that you have, or any of your own work that I could take a look at to help you with? And if not, then no worries. It's nice to have you here live. And I'll take this opportunity to say thank you for anyone who's either watched this live or perhaps gets the chance to watch this later. Let me know, send me a message if there's a better time, if perhaps you can't make this time, if you could suggest a time that's more convenient, and I'll work this out. I'll try a few different times. I'll see what the reception's like, and hopefully we can arrive at a time that suits everyone. There's Jack in the comments. Is that Jack Yayo? Nice to have you here. The legend Jack Leo. Good to have you. Glad you could join. Here's a comment from Jack. How do you generate ideas before a brand design? So do you mean during the process phase that I showed, or even before the process phase? And I think there's a 20-second delay here between my between the stream and what I'm seeing. So forgive me if it seems like I'm taking a while to respond. Yes, you're very welcome for the advice. I'm glad some of it's helped. So if I open the process concepts, and just let me know if this is what you meant in your question, Jack. Is it how I come up with the concepts that you're seeing here? How I come up with these as I'm kind of working through these pages, or something before that? And he's put before the process. Okay, so if it's before this, the honest truth is I have no idea. I might have I might have something loosely in mind that perhaps I've explored on similar projects, but generally, and I'll say this to my client, I'll never agree on the concept before I've had the opportunity to explore it, because it really could go any way. I could come up with an idea while I'm doing this that completely takes me by surprise, and it could be perfect, could be just what the client wants. So I asked them to book me, and I asked for a 50% deposit to kind of share the risk of working together based on my portfolio. So based on my track record, the fact they can see the work I've kind of consistently produced for other clients. I've got Google reviews on my website, so they can see, I've got good reviews. And I ask them that they book me on that basis. And sometimes a client at the meeting will say, could you come up with some ideas? And I'll say, the best ideas are yet to come. That's something I'll come up with while we're working together, while things are in process. And until now, I found that works really well. And it gives me complete freedom to explore. Now, at the same time, if a client shares an idea or a sketch or something specific they want me to work on, I'll do that. I'll explore that concept. But usually I'll convince them to at least explore one or two alternatives, so that at the end we can weigh up the different options and see which works best. So hope that, but yeah, yes, exactly. Hope that answers your question. Good. Well, let's leave a live stream here for this week. Please let me know if there's a better time to do this. Otherwise, I hope you can catch the playback. I won't make any promises this time. I'm not going to say I'll be able to do another one exactly a week from now. We'll have to see how things go. But it's enjoyable, as always, to connect with some of you and to share a little look behind the scenes. And thank you very much for joining. Until next time.